Now to tensions in the Labor Party, though. They boiled over this week with outspoken MP Joel Fitzgibbon quitting his frontbench role. As you know, he cited the Labor Party's climate change policies as being out of step with working class voters. In a further escalation of the infighting, the outgoing shadow minister declared that Mark Butler should not be given the climate change and energy portfolio that he currently holds. Here's Joel Fitzgibbon making his mark on Thursday.
The problem is he's been in that portfolio for 7 years. We've lost 2 elections in which climate change and energy policy was a focus. That's without challenge. He's now, whether justifiable or not, he's been put in a box by both community and industry, and we need a fresh face.
Joining me now is someone who is going to lift the lid on just how fiery these discussions are behind the scenes in the Labor Party. It's recently retired federal Labor MP Michael Danby, who joins me from Melbourne. Michael, thank you for your time tonight. Look, do you think Joel Fitzgibbon did the right thing? Should he have quit his front bench position because of what he says is the Labor Party's focus on climate change issues?
Well, I don't know whether he should have quit his frontbench position. Sometimes it's better to stay and fight, but he may have thought being compromised on this policy might mean that he'd lose his seat, which would be one of the few remaining regional seats that Labor holds. I mean, hey, we're down to 32% of the primary vote. Labor can't afford to alienate working class people, regional people, people who work in gas, coal and oil. I mean, aren't there lessons that are applicable from what's happened in the United States, the recent election, and in the United Kingdom? Labor parties are no longer Labor parties if we abandon the people who we originally represented.
It's such a good point, and it's interesting you bring up the United States, because actually that's what Anthony Albanese is reported to have argued in shadow cabinet. He was arguing that, in fact, Joe Biden's win, which we know took a few days to eventuate, that his win was a message that Albanese was going to pick up a whole lot of seats in Australia, and that people wanted action on climate change. Do you agree with him that this is the takeout from the US election outcome?
Well, I take out from it that Biden nearly lost the elections because of his statements on oil and gas and fracking in Pennsylvania. Anyhow, look, the point is here in Australia we have separate issues. We've got climate limits that we've agreed to. I wish I was as sure of China's claims that they were going to have net zero emissions by 2060. Those rhetorical claims are way in the future. And we've got to somehow transition from where we are to have a base load of power, which is obviously the natural gas. And we can't abandon the people who work in these areas. One of the apocryphal scenes from the last election, Sharry, you'll remember it, is Bob Brown and that arrogant column of Greens that descended on Queensland and told all of the people in the regional seats there what a bunch of dummies they were. That lost, I'm sure it convinced people in Gladstone and Townsville and Mackay and all up the coast there to vote against parties of the left of centre. But the Greens did us tremendous damage, as I think they do it at every election by alienating that part of Labor's core constituency. We can't afford to go on it. Joel Fitzgibbon is dead right.
Michael, you're obviously from the right faction of the Labor Party. So is Joel Fitzgibbon. Joel has said that he has a significant group of support behind him. Do you still speak to everybody? Is that your assessment? Is that right? And does it go to the extent that Anthony Albanese's leadership may now be in trouble?
No, I don't think it goes to the extent that Albo's leadership is now in trouble, but certainly Joel has a rusted-on group of strong supporters. Not everyone in the right. There are some people from inner-city seats, like Mark Dreyfus, who believe that climate change is the be-all and end-all of policy. But it's going to make it very difficult if Albo doesn't listen to his own inclinations and listen to people like Joel Fitzgibbon to get back that section of the working class people who voted against us. I mean, it's very nice to be pure on any issue, whether it's climate change or whatever, but then you don't get into government. You can be 100% pure and 100% impotent.
Look, in terms of, I think that's a very good point, but in terms of, the future leadership of the Labor Party, if Anthony Albanese does come under growing pressure, is there any leader who would change position on this, given how divided federal Labor is on climate change? Bill Shorten was a right faction leader. He had the same problems. Is there anyone that you think might return Labor to being a party of the worker?
Well, apart from Bill, who's obviously got his Field Marshal baton waiting in his backpack, but I don't think there's anyone on the scene now that sort of impresses the Australian people, including, unfortunately, from the Labor right. They're a bit of a disillusionment to most voters. I don't think Joel could do it from a regional seat. I think I'd be desperate to hold on to his own seat. I'd like to see him back as a senior minister in a federal Labor government, but I don't see anyone waiting in the wings. And I'm afraid that a lot of people have made the assessment that Labor is going to lose the next election.
It seems that way.
And it's therefore not worthwhile letting Albo, not supplanting Albo, because you'd be backing a losing cause.
Yeah. Just very quickly, do you think Bill Shorten still has ambitions to return to the leadership?
Oh, anyone who says that they're in federal politics and that they don't is lying. Look, I think he'd have to be drafted, as Joel cutely said about himself. But I can't see any of them at the moment making that compromise with working people that we need to. A lot of them know that that's what we need to do, but I can't see it happening at the moment.
All right. Michael Danby, thank you very much for joining me. Stay safe in Melbourne.
Pleasure. At least we're out of lockdown. Hooray.
Absolutely. Big improvement.